got some motorcycles out today. It is early April in Minnesota. Depending on when you guys are seeing this, assuming this does actually make it onto my channel, it's April of 2020, so we're currently dealing with all of the lovely coronavirus craziness. And I think a lot of people have realized that fishing and riding motorcycles is a socially acceptable form of entertainment right now because, well, being on a bike and wearing a full face helmet keeps you pretty socially isolated. So this is my 2013 Can-Am Spyder ST. Bought this in January. I've had it on the road every single month this year, which in Minnesota is quite the thing to be able to claim. Took it for a test ride, about 30-degree weather in January, and decided, yeah, this was something I needed in my life. Bought it and rode it home. I can tell you that for all of the comparisons online that this thing is just a snowmobile for the street, it has zero traction in the snow. So I really would not recommend riding it in snow like I did. Well, let's just say there were a couple moments where I thought my brand new purchase was going to end up in the ditch. Thankfully it didn't. So I put 200 miles on this bike since I bought it. It's my first Spyder. It's not my first motorcycle, however. I've ridden V-Rods from Harley, and I used to have a V-Star as well. This is my first bike that doesn't start with a V. If you know much about these, this is not the Riker, the new kind of cheaper one they came out with. This is the more sort of upscale one from 2013. It's the middle of the range model for what they made. There were three different flavors of it. There was your RS, which is your very sporty roadster made by Can-Am, the one that was meant to be most like a sport bike. And there was the RT, which is the touring model of it, which is more like your Honda Goldwings, a lot of luggage, a lot of bodywork, a lot of everything else. And this got released to sit right in the middle. So sportier than an RT, but not as aggressive as an RS. Biggest difference, you get kind of the gauge cluster, the headlight and everything that you'd have on the RT of this year, but you don't get all of the extra luggage on it that you would have on an RT. So it's going to be a more sort of sporty bomb around town kind of config. This is the manual transmission version. It's 5-speed, your typical 1 neutral, 2, 3, 4, 5. One of the things that took a little bit of getting used to with this actually has to do with the shift points on it. This is a motor, it's a 998 Rotax, and it really likes to run about where it is right now, about 4,500 RPMs. So if you're somebody who came from big lumpy Harley V-twin world, where you tend to upshift and cruise it at about 1,500 RPMs, this bike really doesn't like that. In fact, it's not very fuel efficient for it at all at that range, and it's kind of annoying to ride. You keep it up around 4,500 and this just smooths out, and it's like butter going down the road. But what that means is for a lot of your like low-end highway riding and a lot of the kind of cruising we're going to be doing today, you never get into fifth gear. Fifth gear is really reserved for about 63 miles an hour and above. Everything below that is going to run in the lower 4. As soon as I figured that out, thanks to various different forum posts, riding this got a whole lot more enjoyable because it didn't feel like I was fighting the bike's power curve as much as I was before. I'm actually looking in my rear view here. I've got a trike coming up behind me. I'm not sure if it's a Spyder or if I'm looking at a... Yeah, it looks like I got a Spyder coming up behind me. 2 of them, actually. Holy cow! So I got what looks like a... oh, you guys can't probably see in my rear view. It's either a F3, and behind it looks like a Riker is cruising up on us. Unfortunately, this is a one-lane highway, so there's absolutely no way I can tell them I know they're behind me. Short of some random wave. Oh, it's closer. It is an F3, so we've got an F3 and a Riker running up behind me. So F3 is the evolution model of this bike. It's a 1300cc as opposed to the 990. A little bit of a different riding posture. It's a bit more of a cruiser. Your feet are more in front of you than they are in the ST. Riker is very much the same. See how far this little unofficial group rolls. More motorcycles than I've seen on the road in a while here, but honestly guys, it's April in Minnesota. It's 60 degrees out. If you're not on your motorcycle and you own one, just sell it. It's like people that own convertibles and drive around at 85 miles an hour, or 85 degrees rather, with the top up and the air conditioning on. Why'd you waste your time? So a couple things about this bike. If you are like me and if you are looking to consider one, I love this thing. I'll be honest, I'll be truthful about this. I'm biased. I adore this thing. I have more fun on this than any motorcycle I've ever been on. It is definitely an acquired taste. You're either going to love it or hate it. There's a few things you can know about it going into it that might help to sway you more towards the, I guess, appreciate and love side. Because if you're not aware of them, not going to be a real fun experience for you the first time you go out on one of these. First one gets covered in just about every blog out there, every video you've ever seen of someone riding one of these for the first time. This leans exactly the opposite of what you'd expect if you're used to riding a motorcycle. If you're coming onto one of these for the first time, having ridden four-wheelers, snowmobiles, things like that, it's exactly the same experience from a standpoint of how this thing wants to shift and how it wants to lean. So when you curl around to the right, the bike's going to lean over to the left more like a car would, which is going to make it feel like it wants to throw you off. It won't, unless you're really not paying attention, but there's still that feeling, and when you're not used to it, man, that's off-putting. The way you counter that is to treat this like a motorcycle. So you can't counter steer, you can't do any of that normal stuff that you would do on a bike to turn. You're still going to have to positively steer. But what you can do is lean into your corners and kind of get off the seat like you would if you were riding aggressively on a bike. So coming into a right-hand turn, if I stay just purely straight up, the bike's going to spin me off on the side here. But if I ease over out of the saddle a little bit, then when the inertia comes and starts pushing me that way, it's going to be pushing me down into the bike as opposed to wanting to throw me off of it. It makes it much more comfortable, especially in an aggressive turn. So that's the first thing. I mean, be aware of that. It's going to lean kind of contrary to what you're expecting. But once you get used to that, really it isn't very off-putting for very long. So here's the second one. Now this one I've not seen covered as well, and it's probably more of an issue for those of you in the Midwest than it is in the South. But specifically on asphalt roads, these bikes tend to hunt around a little bit. In fact, if I try to get into the middle here, I don't know on the video if you'll be able to see how much it'll start squirming underneath me. But what happens on asphalt in any state, in Minnesota, I think the temperature shifts and everything we have up here in the Midwest make it worse. But asphalt gets pliable, it gets soft, and if you're in a neighborhood or in a community where you've got truck traffic especially, all those big heavy tires rolling down a road like this tends to make it crowned a bit. So you get these deep ruts that are formed by the trucks, and then you get a higher crown in the middle. Now that's fine on a motorcycle. You can ride up on that crown all day long. It's fine in a car because your wheels are going to sit into the ruts and you're just going to drive along nice and smooth. But on a trike, you have a different problem. Because you have 3 contact points and because 2 of them are narrower than they are in a car, it isn't really that possible, depending on how wide your ruts are, to get the left wheel in the left rut and the right wheel in the right. So if you're somebody who likes to go dead center down the middle of the lane, what's going to happen is your back tire is going to be up on the bump, your front 2 tires are going to be kind of falling off of either sidewall of the rut, and the bike's just going to start squirming underneath you. It's trying to find a spot that's comfortable. It's trying to find a place where it can live and where the road's not going to be fighting against it. Oops, see, there, it just did it for me too. So now if you saw me suddenly get shifted over there, got a little bit far to the left, the bike tried to track down the other side of the bump in the middle of the road, and suddenly it's fighting me. Now the way that you counter that is to ride either to the left or right of the center line of the track. You want to put either your leftmost tire or your rightmost tire up on that bump, let your outside tire go to the other side of the ridge, and let your rear tire drop into one of those little wells. And then the bike's just going to go smooth, just straight down the road. Now for me, I don't like passing traffic that close to the center line typically, so usually on a road like this, I'm going to bias more towards the right. But it is definitely something to be aware of, especially say when you come to, on a road like this, a turn lane. Because in addition to the road having these weird little slopes, they also tend to fall away to the shoulder for watershed. And on a turn lane, you're going to have the little slopes you're driving over, plus you're going to have slopes on a turn lane on a road that's already kind of bent down towards the outside. And that's going to make for an interesting experience the first time you do it. The bike is just going to slide down into it and feel, again, like it's going to tip, like it's going that way. This is purely a perception issue. The bike isn't actually going to tip over or flip. These things are hard to flip over from everything I've read. Not, again, that I've tried. But it feels like it's going to, and that, again, is just off-putting if you're not expecting it. And if you're aware of it, ways to counteract it, stay off to the center, or off the center rather, kind of off to the left or right, so you're not fighting with that ridge line. And you want to keep a really light grip on the handlebars. Don't try to manhandle it, don't try to force it. Give the bike a little bit of play so that it can find where it wants to ride. Do that, you'll be just fine. I read on Spyder Lovers, which is one of the forums I'm on, some really good advice for new riders of these things to anticipate that the bike's going to take about 1,000 miles to really master. That you're not going to get on it and just sort of fly, no matter how long you've ridden motorcycles. That this is a bike you're going to have to just train your body to understand. And that it takes a season, it takes about 1,000 miles. I am 200 miles into that journey and getting pretty good with it. But it seems like a good sort of rule of thumb to play with here. I like the noise this thing makes. I've got an aftermarket exhaust for it that I was able to get online really cheap from a dealership that was clearancing off some old parts. I have not put it on. I probably will, but I think before I do, I want to get some videos of what this thing actually sounds like. We're just going to take hiding a microphone in the bodywork somewhere. My father-in-law's here. My buddy has not yet arrived. We'll just top her off while we're here. Gas tank's under the seat in these on the left-hand side.